So, on today's episode of
How to Society.
Mental Health.
Yeah.
We all have it.
Well, that's the problem. We don't have.
We don't have it.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
We have mental issues, no health.
Yeah. No, it's a big problem. Especially in the medical field. We don't have the support for mental health that we need to have. I think a lot of problems could be solved if we had better mental health resources for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but like what? What causes can you think off the top that would just be eliminated?
One, mental health services being covered better by insurance.
No, that's not what I meant.
Oh.
I meant, so what kind of issues in society could just go away instantly if you...
Drug use.
Okay, how so?
So I really think that the majority of people that use drugs are using it to cope with an underlying mental health issue, whether that be trauma, anxiety, depression. There's a multitude, but majority of people who abuse substances, you can link it back to a mental illness that they are trying to self-treat.
Okay.
The problem is affording it. Well, and Mendota is a perfect example. So Mendota is the insane asylum the insane asylum in Madison, now known as only for the criminally insane. However, it used to have so many units, you guys. So many units. Anywho.
I know that what you were talking about, the same kind of event happened in California as well. There was a big mental institution that closed down, and that's where most of the homeless came from.
Yep. And well, exactly. Having better mental health would help our homeless population. Because a lot of homeless people are suffering from chronic mental health, and they can't. People with mental health disorders that aren't being treated, they're unable to be a part of society because they can't function. They couldn't go do a job every day because their mental capacity is too unstable.
Well, and then there's cases that it's like, might not be something that they need medicine for it. They just need somebody to talk to, but they have nobody. So,
Right.
how do you even cope with that?
Yep.
I mean, let's ask Cody. He deals with that all the time.
I go to an expert.
Oh, do you
I
actually
consult-
have a therapist?
I consult myself.
Oh,
Nice.
that's where you went wrong.
Yeah, no, but like on a serious note, like I have a therapist that I see, and I just go there just to talk. I mean, I don't. It's like stress relief. That's why I just go for stress management. Because why not?
Yeah.
I don't want to. You guess what you got your friends for? Is, talk and have casual conversation with, and maybe unload some stress. But I don't want to burden, because I got a lot of stress. I lose a lot of friends. I've already lost one.
Wow, you're still here. You don't
Is he
understand
though?
what the word lose means.
The reason why we're sitting on opposite ends of the table.
Oh, I gotcha.
Well, and hold on, what was I gonna say? Because it was on that point. Oh, like the pandemic is a perfect example of how unstable our mental health is as a society.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of people actively looking for counselors and therapists and requiring therapy and all of that kind of stuff, all because we can't interact with each other as much anymore.
Well, yeah,
And we
but
don't have the resources to support that kind of social distancing even.
not that I disagree with anything mental health illness. I mean, we all have plenty of experience with it, but my thing is, like, a lot of the problems that seem to be around didn't seem like, not that they weren't around, but nobody really paid attention to them, 50 years ago, 70 years ago. And now it's just very, I don't know, hip to have depression.
I get where you're
anxiety.
coming from. It does seem like it's a modern issue. They also used to treat most of those issues by lobotomizing people. So I don't want to say that it used to be better because by no means.
Yeah.
I think
mean,
the
that's
difference
different.
was back then those people were literally made to keep it in, and they just either killed themselves and then it was nobody's problem, or they were literally the town idiot.
Yep.
You know, and so that's
Or
just how they treated it.
or they accused them of being possessed by demons.
That too.
I guess when I was thinking mental illness, I wasn't thinking so much as the debilitating kind. And
Gotcha.
I see.
I'm
That's
bigger
fair.
picture
I mean,
thing.
I
Like,
still know people today, like people that I work with, that will legitimately say anxiety is not a real thing.
Oh,
yeah,
so
there's
that's,
a lot of
I
people
was
like
gonna
that.
say, the biggest issue we have really around mental illness is the stigma. I mean, you can't say you have a mental illness problem without people automatically assuming, oh, so you're
Mhm.
crazy. Now, trust me, I know some crazy mental illness people.
So
But
the point is, it's not only a need to treat it; it's a need to acknowledge it and then work on it.
right. Well, I'm sorry. I don't mean to monopolize the conversation. However, the other thing to think about is we don't know very much about it because the only way to truly study mental illness is to understand the levels of the neurotransmitters in your brain. And I don't know if you know this, but it's hard to, cut up someone's brain and them still be
that's what the
alive.
Neuralink is
so.
going to be for.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yes,
like,
find out the
but that's the
pathways.
thing about our medications, our antipsychotics, our antidepressants. We're kind of like, yeah, it seems to make people feel better. We think it has something to do with dopamine and serotonin.
And now they have the scans, whatever the one that actually cuts through the brain and slices, and it shows every bit in color and all that stuff.
Right, but that still doesn't tell us enough.
I know, but
it
it's a
has
start.
helped us a lot. Yes.
As well as all the sensors that can pick up where the activity is, and it's
Yeah.
all a matter of doing more testing, and that's why we've been able to address it more now than we used to, because we actually know a little bit more about it.
Yep.
Not that,
And we've acknowledged it as something we need to look into.
not that this has anything to do with anything, but you can give a lobster antidepressants and make him happy because they have the same neurobiochemistry that we
Nice.
do.
Was lobsters are one of the few animals that are immortal, so I mean, of course they're gonna be upset.
Whoa. I didn't know lobsters
Could
were
you
immortal.
imagine living forever?
They don't get sick, and they don't have the cell degeneration. That's why they're immortal. They can still die.
Yeah.
Right.
Obviously.
They're not gonna take over the world.
Right, like by boiling them.
Yeah.
So we keep the lobster population in check, huh? Good to know.
Well,
Let's
there's
eat
other
more
things
lobster.
in them too.
Most of the mental illness is caused by vaccines, so.
Oh
Okay.
my
No,
gosh.
no.
Did you...
No, I read a really good paper about that.
No,
by,
I'm not even
by
doing
a
this.
doctor
Guys.
read a
who
really
was in
good
California, but he moved to LA,
Oh.
to London to continue his research.
You know,
so.
weren't we just, I feel
So-
like we just had this conversation.
We need to, I think we did. But anyway, the point is, we need to retract all that because that's not factual in any shape
No,
or
it's
form.
not factual.
Know your facts.
Yeah, it was what? Did you read that on a Facebook post?
I don't think this.
It was a joke.
I know, it's a joke.
I don't
I'm
think-
making sure they know it's a
I don't
joke.
think this episode can delve into vaccines because that's its own
Oh, that's
nest
a whole
of
other
issues.
can of worms.
So we'll just leave it at vaccines work. Go take them. No, we're not being paid by anybody to say that. Science proves it. If you have any questions, go read papers.
Like
There are
actual scientific data-driven
Accredited,
papers,
peer-reviewed.
peer-reviewed, yeah. Not your friend's Facebook page.
Yeah, there is actually more papers for it than there are against it from the actual scientific community, and the ones that were against it, because there were a lot of legit concerns at the beginning. All of those issues have been addressed and then some. So,
Well, okay, so not to go further into this topic, but I have a question for you. So we're talking about mental illness, and you have a lot of people in today's day and age who, even though there's an overwhelming amount of evidence for things like vaccines, the earth being around, all these kinds of things, they still say all these people are lying. I mean, that has to, in and of itself, knowing how much evidence there is for these things, like, not all of them, but, like, some of these people have to have mental illnesses, because,
So-
I mean, Go ahead.
it isn't quite a mental illness. That's just part of how your brain works. It's a lot of the times it's a part of either fight or flight, or you could delve a little bit deeper into it and consider it to be more of like a stress management, like if I don't think about it, it can't hurt me kind of
Right.
deal. So that's what most of that happens. Plus, lack of education is a huge thing.
That's what I would take it to, is not even a lack of education, a lack of understanding about how to recognize information presented to you that is, based in factual stuff, and you can reproduce it, and what's the word I'm thinking of? Research that is
Provable?
not provable, but like
Experimentable.
no, means that it's credible. Oh, there you go. Huh?
Credible.
Just credible research. People don't even understand that there's a difference between a paper that's not credible and a paper that is credible.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even understand that. You gotta know who posted it and who funded the research too.
I feel like I got us off on a tangent.
Yeah,
That's
a little
alright,
bit.
but I mean, ignorance is bliss when it comes to that. What
Oh,
was it? And this was there was a Texas booed somebody because they said that the moon reflects sunlight. I mean, it does.
fact,
That's
yeah.
literally how you see the moon.
Yeah, well, there are people out there who believe the Earth is flat.
Well, yeah, but that's just, it goes again, I think people just need something to argue about. As a hobby, I go and find things to argue with people
And
about.
that's what happens a lot of time. It starts off with people trolling, and then it just goes from there. But it's just a misinformation is very strong right now.
Yeah.
And that's part of the issue, bringing the topic back to mental health. Again, knowing the signs and educating people about how to deal with people who. So and then the thing is, it runs the gamut. I mean, you could say that the U.S.'s issue with food, that's a mental health all of its own. The reason we eat what we eat, a lot of people eat their feelings away, if you will.
I have so many opinions.
Let's talk about what I like is when people say,
Podrig!
how can you be depressed? You've got so much things to be happy for. And then, I always love the memes where it's like, why do you have asthma? There's so much air around you.
So much air, just breathe.
Yes. Acting like it's not important. Even the medical field needs to work on it, because how we treat somebody with diabetic issues and a thing, it's like, oh, well, it's not your fault you have diabetes, it's, genetics, and it's a disorder, and we're going to treat it, and we're going to help you, and here's your supplies. You have anxiety or depression or schizophrenia, and we're like, oh, what did you do wrong in your life?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, are you anxious because of how you're living, and what are you doing in your life to make it better, versus, you have this disorder, now let's find a way to treat it.
Which to that point, I think that maybe the way they're it's not wrong. If you're living in a stressful, anxious environment, you should get out of
Right.
it. You should do it. So, but I think the way that they go about it and saying it, well, you need to. What are you doing to do
Why are you
Which
right?
is a valid question, but then again, when they tell you okay, well, here's a resource on how to get yourself out of your home. Here's these people can possibly help you or lead to help you. Here's what we can do to otherwise treat your anxiety until you get out of this, that, and the other.
Right. So, and on that kind of note, do you think somebody who has a broken brain is capable of using their own brain to fix their problem?
Half the time people aren't
Yeah.
aware.
Yes.
I mean, how long did it take you to figure out that you had been depressed? I mean, usually it's not something that's like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm depressed. No, it's like, how come for this last week I haven't felt anything?
I mean, that's a really good point. When I was growing up, I never realized that I had depression until I was suicidal, and then it actually hit me. Oh, you know,
Maybe it's not
something
normal
right.
that every time I see a speeding car, I'm like, oh, I wonder if I could just
Right.
walk.
And
in.
honestly, I had no idea that wasn't normal. I remember they took me to Madison because that's the only place you can go for mental health crises and stuff.
Yeah.
So I made a suicide attempt. We went to Madison, and the nurse was sitting there talking with me, and he's like, so, I mean, did you have a plan, all these different things? And I was like, yep. And I was like, but I mean, I've always had a plan. He's like, what do you mean always? I was like, I don't know, I've always known if I was going to kill myself, I know how I would do it. It just, like, I thought that was normal. And he's like, that's not normal at all. And I was like, so wait, like, if you're driving, do you like ever just think about swerving into a truck and whatever? He's like, no, I don't, but I don't have depression. I'm like, I never thought about myself having depression before, and it was really weird. But I mean, I was also a cutter when I was a teenager too, and still, it never clicked with me that I might be suffering from something like depression. It just
like I feel that way too because I didn't recognize I had an anxiety problem. Until I was like 20 in nursing school and going to the ER for, my heart is racing and I'm dying. And they're like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with your heart. I'm like, oh, sweet. Yeah, we just think you have anxiety. I'm like, is that what it is? Like, you mean since I was 6 years old and I could remember telling my mom, like, I feel like I need to dance all crazy. That's the 6-year-old version of a panic attack. Didn't know that.
Well, and that's something that, like, therapists and counselors always ask you, like, well, how long have you been dealing with this? And it's like, I don't know, as long as I can remember, especially since puberty, but honestly, as long as you can remember, it's just been
It's always on there.
Which can lead to an interesting thing about mental health. The worst resources we have are for kids and adolescents as far as mental health goes. Mm-hmm. We have all this stuff for adults, but when it comes to treating children, our resources are so limited.
There is nobody in town that specializes in children's psychology.
Oh,
wow.
Like there's some people that were like, yeah, we'll talk to your child, but there's nobody that's like legit because I've called like my therapist's office. I was like, hey, I'd like to get my daughter in to talk to my therapist because these are some issues that she's having. I think it would be beneficial. They're like, we had a person, they're no longer with us, they moved somewhere else. The next closest person is like over here, and I was like, not willing. I mean, like, I would, as a parent, I should be willing to drive, but I was like,
it's not that
I don't want to have to drive that far out of my area. I'll just like I've suffered with it. Like not saying that my child suffered with it, but I've suffered with it.
So you're continuing the cycle though?
No. So, but what I'm saying is like I've suffered with it. I know kind of like how I know it's different for everyone. I know how I would like to be talked to about it. I there's certain ways that I like it to be discussed, and like I have sat down and talked with my children. Like, okay, what's going on? Like, what can we do to make improvements? What do you need from me to make the situation better? Because, like I said, like there's a place down by the middle school. I think they have like they don't specialize in children, but they'll take in children.
Yeah.
They're garbage. They don't let you talk. They blast you with questions and then say, well, why do you think that is? I don't know. I'm coming to you. Why do you think that is? Help me. Help you. Help me.
So actually, I think that's a really good point. I think most people don't understand that when it comes to like going to a counselor versus someone like a psychiatrist, like the counselor's job is to help you organize your thoughts and process your stuff. So that really is a very normal therapy for things like counseling.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, most of the people in Reedsburg, anyway, who, counsel or anything, like, they're counselors. I mean, I know we have one psychiatrist, at least at the hospital, but I think that's the only one, you know?
Right, I think. I'm not 100% sure how many
Right.
psychiatrists are in Reedsburg anymore.
But I know
about-
most of the people I've seen for mental health in Reedsburg have all been counselors, you know?
Correct, and that's another. So we're already in healthcare shortage, right? The workers, psychiatry suffers big time. Like the amount of psychiatric providers we have is so small, and it's a field that is so difficult to be a part of because of the type of patients we take care of, and because you don't have the resources to properly take care of them. I mean, it's a
Was somebody told me that you would almost need a psychiatrist or a
Yes.
psychiatrist.
Yeah.
that's actually a thing.
Because
Psychiatrists
because
see
you're
each
taking
other.
in, you're absorbing all of these
Yes.
people's info and vibes, and you're just at the end of the day, I couldn't do it because I'd be like, now I'm upset. How do I rationalize it? I'm supposed to help because that's what I help people, but I can't take my own advice. So if there are psychiatrists out there that are, I think that's a normal thing. You can help people, but you can't take your own advice. Then they get
Right, and now they have all the burdens of all their patients on them too. Absolutely. I think that's, yep. Well, I mean, Hannibal's a good example. I mean, all of them had each other as a psychiatrist.
But you know what else is funny is that when it comes to counseling and stuff, even technically pastors are certified counselors. You know, so and so you think about that, if you go to a professional place or a pastor, the advice you're going to get is going to be so very different. Not necessarily that the pastors are stupid or anything, but they're coming at it from a very different perspective than somebody who's coming at it from a professional, worldview. You know what I mean? And I know personally, sitting down with several pastors and having that counseling, it leaves something to be desired.
Well, and
Especially when you're trying to say, all of this is, demons or spiritual forces, and it's if you just pray more, you'll do better, which in some cases can help, but it doesn't help any more than actually just sitting and meditating does, calming your thoughts and getting to your center.
Well, and I think I think as far as pastor versus counselor for counseling, I think that's really going to depend on how much you appreciate the advice they give you is going to depend on what your spiritual views are too. So I think, because a lot of counselors I've been to, they always ask about religious preferences.
Yep.
And, if they find out you're a Christian and that's important to you, they will change to talking about God and how the Bible can help you and things like that too, rather than giving you another book to read.
Right.
So, if you are going to try and solve the issue, other than education, some kind of fucking health insurance that covered all that.
Tell you what,
Free healthcare.
I got this solved.
Okay.
Stop the war on drugs. Make them all legal. Take all those profits and the money you're saving from the war on drugs, and put all of that into mental health.
Okay.
Make it a solution.
But how would you actually... So you need to educate people.
Mm-hmm.
Say you had the budget, basically. You
Okay, I
had
can
that
do
budget.
whatever I wanted. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
magic
Okay.
wand.
All right, I have the magic wand. What would Megan do? Okay, this is exciting. I can do whatever I want. Okay, so first of all, we need better mental health facilities. Okay. And then, even think of our geriatrics. Okay, we have older patients who have all of these disorders too, and
Sorry,
so
what are geriatrics?
older patients.
Okay, that's
Yep, geriatrics means our older
Is
population.
it over 50?
I don't know. Means they're old.
Okay.
I don't know the technicalities. Okay, that age in my mind shifts as I get older. But where was I going with this? So we need better mental health services in our long-term care facilities. Okay, that's a good place to start. Get our older population taken care of. Then we need, and I know we need. This is a little bit harder than I
So
thought.
it should be educated in
Yep.
schools.
Yep, and so it's hard to like tweak curriculum and say, "Whoa."
I know,
you gotta do
but
this.
it
Yeah,
should
but I mean,
be
we have
some-
health classes.
Exactly.
We have
That's
sex
true.
classes.
Yes.
It should
It
be part.
taught. Yeah.
Yeah, it should be
Then
part of. Yep.
More money and education should go towards counselors because we don't want a fraud like from Bob's Burgers.
Yes. we
So
want to
that should be a
Oh
thing.
yeah, and like investing in school counselors.
Mhm.
You know, that's a good point. The only year I spent in the public school system, they sent me to the counselor because one of my teachers was like, I think there's something like
Yes.
And I just remember I went and saw them. It was like a 5-minute conversation. They're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yep." And they're like, "Is anything going on?" I'm like, "No, I'm fine." And like they're like, "Okay, bye." And I was like, "Okay, bye." And like that's all that ever happened. Like I mean, and my teacher had good reasons to be concerned, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's all that
They-
happens. Like,
yeah.
what are they gonna do? You know?
We need to have better places to send people than just Winnebago and Mendota.
Then the other thing I think should also happen is refocusing in the way we treat. So let me give an example. There's a lot of people that are on medicine that don't need medicine. They need to treat the underlying symptom. Or like people who think they are sick. You know, that's mental health related. So if you address all that, that would take out a lot of people that are hurting the system, if you will.
So covering things like meditation therapy under insurance, right? And making sure everybody has insurance. But
Having a personal trainer under insurance.
right, but that's what I'm saying. Like it's as simple as that. Like making therapies that psychiatrists can prescribe covered so that people can actually go to them.
But I mean, how many of these mental health problems do you think literally are just from our terrible diet, no exercise, all these kinds of things?
So I think you're right, but I think it's usually the other way around.
That the depression things cause you to.
Yes, but it's a circle.
They feed
Yes.
off each other.
Exactly. So you need to change multiple things at once in order to break free. However, if you can at least control your mental faculties, if you will, it'll make you be more clear about making those other decisions that are going to improve.
Crisis workers. So being an ER nurse, I've worked with many crisis workers. We need more of them. We just do not have enough. People whose sole job, and they work for like the public health usually, whose job is to say, oh, in this hospital they've got a suicidal patient. You know, where can this person go so that we can keep them safe and get them back in line till they're safe to go home. You know?
Yeah, I remember. Sorry.
No,
but
it's okay. Go ahead.
when I went to the hospital for my episode, they had like 7 or 9 other people who came in that night for suicidal stuff too. And I mean, you have to have somebody sit with that person the entire time until the counselor or whoever can come see them, check them out.
Clears them.
Clears them or says, no, you need to go somewhere else to get, full-time stuff. And so, I mean, you're taking nurses off the floor to sit with these patients, to constantly be in the room, and then you only have one psychiatrist going to these 9 different patients, having hour-long conversations, trying to see if, are you a danger to yourself, are you a danger to others, what do we need to do? And so, I mean, it took hours for them to finally get to me, because, I mean, I wasn't that desperate of a case, you know what I mean? Like, at that point, I had gotten my...
somebody who had actually taken a whole bottle of Tylenol right then and there.
Right,
I gotcha.
yep.
Yeah.
Or like, I remember there was, like I was in my room and there's like multiple people screaming, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, yep. And I am one of these people. Like, that's what I remember thinking. I know that's terrible, but I just like...
Well, but think about that. So the only environment we have to put people in with that kind of problem is a place filled with people who are actually suffering with debilitating mental health illness problems like schizophrenia and horrible bipolar and
because we have no early ways to intervene, so we have to wait till it escalates to that point.
right, and then we send them to a place where they're going to be put with people who are screaming and yelling and seeing things and
And it's just like, listen, man, I just kind of need,
I just need someone to give me a hug. I'm just kidding. That is not the solution to suicide, although I will give you a hug if you need one. But yeah.
I just think we need to, Here's so kind of going back to like the difference between the generations, popularizing it. I think the next coming generations will be better off than let's say we were, because like when I grew up, it was like, obviously like boys don't cry, boys don't show their emotions, like what the hell you need your mom for? And then like, so like the future generations, we're gonna have people who are like, okay, I'm free to express my feelings. Now people will understand that if I express my feelings, I can progress and figure out what I need compared to like, well, suck it up.
Which comes back to the whole, you're more likely to talk about an issue and we can get help for it.
And I agree with this, but at the same time, we also, like, I feel like in some aspects we've taken that too far. We're now to a point, it's like, well, those are my feelings and you can't say anything against them because otherwise you're attacking. It's like, no, you're just like, this whole...
So my argument against that is no matter what, whenever there is change and stuff, there are always outliers. And there will always be people taking advantage of systems and blah, 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 blah. Those are the type of people.
Hey.
The reality is we just have to learn to deal with them because they're never going to go away.
Right.
If they don't have that to use, they'll use something else.
The other thing I could say is part of that also might be leftovers of the way you were brought up. Like, there's a certain stigma that will always be there with you. So what is so wrong about somebody to, if they actually feel insulted, shouldn't you do everything in your power to help?
I agree, but at the same time, there's a certain amount of social dynamics that goes into it where there is going to be sarcasm, there's going to be teasing, and that is literally part of it, especially for males, that is part of a bonding experience. And it's not that it's a bad thing, it's that, you know what, sometimes you do need to have a little bit of a tougher skin.
Trust me, I understand, and usually that's how, but I guess I don't do anything better. My friends all have tough skin, so I don't have to worry about it.
No, and I agree with that.
That's not a solution because I just tend to avoid people who are easily offended.
Right, but I mean, I think like if I got thrown into a situation with people who are like, that offends me, blah, 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 like this whole cancel culture that we have going on, I would get canceled immediately. Because like the things that me and my friends say at the Foundry completely offend. Like we are the biggest dicks to each other, but we all like each other. It's all in jest for the most part, and so it's.
There's a couple of quotes. Can't think of them. Like how you feel isn't wrong.
Right.
Okay, so that's a good one kind of for this. It's like, you could say something and they could be like, okay, well that offends me. Now, the other good one to that is, okay, well guess what happens when you're offended? Nothing.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Then
and that's...
the other one to that is I'm responsible for what I say, not for what you hear.
Exactly.
So, and like Jan said, he surrounds himself with those types of people because you tend to surround yourself with like-minded people, people with the same humor. So, like, you either adapt or you walk away from it. You can apologize, and you could very well apologize and not mean it, and just to ease it.
Or honestly, if somebody says something that offends you, in the words of the dude, that's like your opinion.
That's like your opinion, man.
Well, and that's what I think too. That's what I was gonna say is that the reality is you can feel however you want. You really can. But when you start saying that your feelings must supersede somebody else and how they behave, that's when I think we need to take a step back and say, you're responsible for your feelings.
I mean, it is a two-way street.
This
So
is true.
if you don't want somebody telling you how you can feel, you shouldn't tell somebody how they can feel.
Yes, exactly.
But it gets so
It's a lot
messed
more
up.
complicated.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's
I agree.
But back to mental health, education, awareness, talking about it.
Resources.
I think if you can get rid of a lot of the stigma and you're able to have a straight conversation with others, that'll make you realize something and maybe get the help you need. Yeah.
Yeah, get the help you need before it progresses to a stage when you're going to the ER because you think you're dying.
Yeah.
I also think with that is with going ahead and having a straight conversation with somebody about it is even if they don't care, eventually, somewhere down the road, something's going to happen. And they're going to be faced with it, or they're going, somebody in their family, or even them, and then they're going to look back and be like, they're going to remember those conversations that they had, even if they didn't agree with it. And they're going to say, this is what that person was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it takes that going through it themselves to actually fully recognize and understand that, oh shit, my views on everything, I was wrong.
Absolutely. That's called planting the seed. You plant the seed that we need awareness, and then something happens, and it grows, and you understand.
I think another thing is that people need to realize, like with mental illness and stuff, at least when it comes to like suicide or anything like that, a lot of people feel like they need to blame themselves if somebody does that, like, oh, I should have known. But it's like, if somebody's going to commit suicide, they're going to do it. It's not going to be based on what you do or what you didn't do. That is in that person's own head and whether or not they are going to fix what's going on. And, like, I don't know. There are people who feel really guilty when people commit suicide because they should have done something. But honestly, what are you going to do?
So I think that's a really good point, because I know that I've dealt with that on that end. And that's what I had to work through, was not taking the blame for something like that. And exactly just like you said, you need to recognize as a person that it was their broken brain.
It's not about you.
Well,
It's
I mean,
no,
it's
straight up.
complicated.
No. It's
Okay,
pretty straightforward. It's not about you. It's so. For instance, I killed myself. It's not about you. It's about me.
Right. Yep.
It was my choice. It's my body. It's my right.
But,
Well, so what do we feel about,
assisted suicide?
well, I mean, we could dive into that, but, so, like, when somebody kills themselves, and then you have the people that are like, oh, I wish I could have done something, but then you have the opposite end of the group, where they're like, that's just selfish. Why would you kill yourself? Think about that. Here, and this is just my opinion, I don't think it's selfish. I think if you're suffering that much, and especially in the United States, where we do not have that culture of actually caring about other people, so let's say we'll move away from that. Let's say you're by yourself, you don't have any living family, you're depressed or suicidal, and yeah, you've got friends, but you feel like you can't reach out to anyone, you don't have those resources, you end it, and then, like that. Or the other end, where it's like, I've got 4 kids, and I don't feel like I'm good enough for my family, I don't feel like I'm a good dad, I don't feel like I'm a good partner, I don't feel this, that, or the other, and I do it. I commit suicide. Is that selfish? I don't think so. I just don't think it is. I think, like he said, I think that's their choice to. They're in it so deep that they feel like that is their only solution. That because of a broken brain that's been thrown on, is that everyone around them is better off without them in it. I don't think that's selfish, but that's just me.
See, I don't know. It's funny because I've been like right on that doorstep, and I kind of do fall into that group that says, it is just kind of selfish, and maybe it's just because I've come out the other side of it. But when you're in that place, you are only focusing on yourself and how you feel, and you're not taking, like, you do take into consideration how it's going to affect other people, but you don't think you matter enough that it'll actually affect anybody. And the fact that you say you can't reach out to anybody, I can tell you now that's just a lie. Most people will listen to you if you're honestly talking about suicide. You can always call the suicide hotline. I did call them one time, and they weren't very helpful. I'm not going to lie to you.
I heard of somebody who called and it was busy.
Yeah, I mean, that also happened. You got a busy thing.
That's got to be like, well, that's a sign.
But no, it was funny when I actually called the suicide hotline that one time. I felt like they were like, okay, can we get off the phone now? And I was like, really, dude, all I want to do is talk, because I don't feel like I have anybody to talk to. But anyway, I don't know. I do, I guess, think that it is selfish in that way, but only because I guess I've seen how it affected my family when I was going to do that. And it just makes you realize it's like, that these people actually feel like it's their fault, when really it's not. It has nothing to do with anybody else, like we said, but that person. And so in a way, I mean, I do think of it as selfish, and I think it's stupid, but Like I said, I think that's just because I've come out the other side of it and seen the effects it's had on people.
So, as a family member who's dealt with lots of suicide, and as a healthcare professional who's dealt with lots of suicide, I have helped a lot of people work through that suicide attempt, and every single one of them has to deal with the fact that they tried, and every person I've ever talked to that has actually tried really regrets their decision for similar reasons as to why you stated, because their brain at the moment couldn't comprehend that they were not hopeless and they were not helpless, and there was no reason, they were not worthless, their brain could not comprehend that, and so they thought the only thing that they could do was remove themselves from the equation. And so I strongly feel people who feel suicidal are not capable of properly caring for themselves in that moment, and they need someone to take care of them until they work through that issue or whatever is wrong with their brain, so that they can realize that even that you're not hopeless, you're not worthless, and you're not helpless. Because I'm here to tell you that I am the type of person that the minute I hear somebody killed themselves, my heart breaks, because I love everybody. And I know it's super blanket statement, blah, 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 but I would never, ever want anyone, even if you've never met me and you're only watching me here, I still love you. End of story. You were never alone, you were never whatever, blah, 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 because I care that much about people. That's why I became a nurse. And it always breaks my heart when I hear people even thinking about wanting to take their life, because I value your life so much. And so with everything I've seen and experienced, I will never be comfortable with saying that is someone's right, that is someone's choice. Because with all of the evidence put in front of me, I really believe that people who are making that choice, they are incapable of making another choice because of whatever is going on inside their head. That's jump off my soapbox.
Wrapping up, what would you like to say about mental health? Final words.
Final words on mental health. I would say that I think a big place you need more mental health care is actually in a workplace. I mean, just recently we've had 2 different people kill themselves at the foundry, not at the foundry, but people who work there because of COVID and stuff like this. And it's like, nobody cares. Nobody's getting help. Everybody's just whatever. You talk to anybody about any kind of mental health thing there, and they'll basically tell you, yeah, get over it. It's not real. And so I think that education, even within workplaces and stuff like that, and people who are actually there to help you in those workplaces.
Somebody who cares.
Right, could be a big help in those places. Like, if every workplace had, like, at least one counselor that you could just go to be like, hey, man, like, work sucks, everything sucks. I don't know. I think that would help a lot. Like, I think it should be, like, an HR position.
Which it kind of is in some Fortune 500, but it's nowhere near enough. Right. It's really not enough. Cody?
Just more acceptance, and realize that just because it's not happening to you at the moment doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Be kind to everyone. We don't know people's struggles just by looking at them. And just hopefully we can figure out a way to get it all kind of sorted and at least take steps to help relieve the situation until we can fully throw our full weight at it.
Yeah, pretty much same thing. Just needs to be a higher priority than it currently is. More awareness of it, and that's half the battle. Making people aware and making people accept that it's a constant, that needs to be addressed. So yeah. Gloomy episode, but that's kind of how it goes.
I didn't think it was too gloomy.
I thought it was pretty gloomy.
I don't know. It's a good topic. I get excited talking about this topic because we need help.
Especially in our family.
I know.